residential, so this is room and board, and this includes the approximately $8,500 per student times 12 months, because they're there all year, and by approximately 20 students. I think we have about 15 or 16 right now, but I know that some of we estimated 20 to hopefully to cover all of those expenses, which brings us to the $2,000,004. So the very next section there where it shows the self-expenses of the 2171, which is up top, the residential expenses of $2 million, which brings us to the $4,000,002. And at the bottom, the way we received documentation from the state identifying how much we would be getting based on ADA that they had, the ADA that they were using. We're going to actually get the money based on the ADA for 11-12, so our actual P2 ADA. So I made adjustments. So on the right-hand side on the bottom, that's where it's actually identifying most likely how much money we're going to be getting. I went ahead and estimated for the Prop 63. I only estimated $25,000 because we don't know what we're going to be getting from DBH, and we put a dollar amount in there. If it's more, then there's going to be more that would be able to go to the districts, because the expense for the South is the expense for the South, and then whatever, if there's more funding that we would get, it could go to, it could be distributed out, but it has limited expenses that we can use for that. So we'll have to take a look at that if there's additional funds there. So the balance, which would go to the districts that we talked earlier, is $1,000,004. That's how we came up with the estimate for mental health.
And this money, it's going to be really important that we effectively spend this money this year, because what typically happens in California financing is if you don't spend what you're allocated, they just decrease it the next year to what you did actually spend. So we're going to have to really work on in a sense, a spending plan so that we are spending this money, because probably our future funding is dependent upon our ability to spend this money for mental health services and to document that we spent it for those services. The federal funding has gone on year after year after year. It is part of the IDA grant, so they'd have to give it to us one way or the other. But that's really the smallest piece of the pot. The Prop 98 funding is really the bulk of it. That's the one that could be adjusted next year. And the Prop $63 are one-time money. Now, there was discussion that next year those would go to SELPAs instead of going to DBH, but that money is coming out of Mental Health Services Act money, and they cannot take those dollars and give them to us, technically, because that's not what the voters voted on. That, I think, if any money is in question, it's really that Prop 63 money, whether we would have that next year, and of course the Prop 98 money. When I was at self-administrators last year, there are people who have not even spent or have invoices for the funding they got last year, because their DBH went on and provided services all year, so they didn't really have expenses. So now they're working with their DBH to bill them for things, but it really makes it look like they didn't need the money. And fortunately, they did extend the time period into this year for them to spend that money. But, you know, I know.
I mean, if they're still being funded, then there's no need, right?
Yeah.
So reallocate.
And one quick thing that I want to add also is this, the monies that we're getting in this year, you know, I said that we're going to have to give different documentation. It's coming in as a separate resource, and the resource doesn't mean hardly probably anything to you guys, but a 6,500 resource is basically your state special ed money. This mental health money, that's not the federal piece, it's going to be coming in as a 6512 that was just recorded at self-administrator. So we're going to have to account for all of this money completely separate from the other special ed funding that we have. So just wanted to, that's a good thing for us that have to do that thing. Yes.
So when the 1.4 million
it will be the six, it will be the new resource,
And the
yes.
same expenditure rules apply at the district level.
Correct, correct. And one of the reasons I'm also kind of talking about that is when we went and we have some of the private school monies that the WESELPA is now going ahead and using and surfacing those students. Initially, a lot of that money, it was initially distributed out to the districts, and then districts were not able to spend that money, so we were not able to expend it in those years. So then it's gone to the WESELPA because we've been able to account for those specifically. So there is a reporting requirement, and I'm sure that the districts will be able to do that. It's just going to be much more detailed than we have had to do in the past.
Yeah, and it wasn't that you didn't spend the money, you provided the services, but your fiscal people, either it was more work than it was worth to them because you would have to have separate time sheets for federal funds and state funds to show those expenses. So you weren't able to show the expenses, even though you in many cases did do the services. So I don't know if you want to have just general discussion first and then go point by point and have, look at approval for each of these, or if we want to, how you want to go about this process. Is there any questions perhaps that we can start with that apply to the overall proposal? Okay.
Does this affect maintenance of effort for any districts?
I'm sorry.
Does this affect maintenance of effort for any districts? I know it won't mind, but for like someone like Chafee that spent so much on WESELPA counseling, now it's funded differently, will it show up as a maintenance of effort problem at all?
It won't be, the counseling piece will not be a problem with maintenance of effort because the way we distribute the money, it comes off the top and that is a WESELPA expense.
Oh.
Right now it's a WESELPA expense, so you know how I say you pay for it, but you don't have, it's not in your books that you pay for it because it comes off the top, so it will not affect it that way. Actually, with what we're proposing, it's going to free up more of your state money to be used for other special ed expenses and maybe not having to go into the general fund as much. That's
Right. And any money that goes to the district, I mean, this will, if you know, money that's going directly to the district will increase your maintenance of effort, but you have an additional mandate. And hopefully we'll continue to get this level of funding. Because you know, I mean, our mandate's been increased and our funding's been increased. So yes, your maintenance of effort actually will go up some for the services that are being provided through the district, but you're getting increased funding for that, and so we would expect that you would continue those services from year to year because they're new requirements.
Well, won't it kind of balance because it will maybe ease some of the encroachment issues?
I think it will.
It sounds like, in theory, that it's going to be a wash. In theory.
Right.
Now, how it's going to play out on paper, I don't know.
Yeah.
But in theory, it sounds like if you're decreasing your encroachment to the general fund, you probably got to end up being in some regard.
Right, and we wanted to do that. I mean, you know, because typically our funding model, we give out everything by STEM ADA. But clearly these services are not, they don't fall upon districts because of our unique structure of having a high school district, elementary districts, and a couple of unified districts. They don't fall equally across all of you. And so, you know, we want to, if we did it by ADA, it probably would certainly be a disadvantage to Chafee because our most expensive kids are our residential kids. I mean, you could provide a lot of outpatient counseling for what you pay for one residential kid. And, you know, because those are the older kids, it does adversely affect our three districts who have high school age students.
You're talking about the big one,
Right.
not the 1.4.
Right. Well,
Is your plan to
Well,
do
the
that?
one-
well, in order, we could have just said, okay, we'll just
Right,
divide it
but
all
I'm
up
just saying,
equally.
the way you have it distributed, the 1.4 is gonna be distributed by ADA?
Well, I think we're looking at getting
That
the
would be really
committee
to
together
have
to
the committee
determine.
back and determine,
Well,
so.
that's my question is, you want all this approved so you guys can hire people immediately, but then the districts can't really implement anything if you guys are gonna withhold that 1.4 from the districts. I think we need to make a decision as a group, if that's gonna go to the districts or go to a committee. That's just my suggestion, everyone else may feel differently.
Yeah,
But,
and I mean, and if it goes to the districts and you decide, we would do it as a regional service, you could have a fee for service for that. And, so you could share the cost of those services, so that, Alta Loma is a fairly small district. It may not be able to, hire an individual to do services, a specific service, but they may be able to access services that are shared.
Right, and that's what I was trying to figure out how it's gonna be distributed, because that's gonna make a difference whether or not it's worth going to the districts.
Yeah.
If it's by ADA, then I don't know if that's gonna be enough to hire somebody. Maybe a portion of a person, but.
Well, and some of this would be to replace your free referral dollars, and these may not be new people you're hiring, but people you existingly have, you now are allocating over to mental health. So if you have victims,
Mhm.
if you have people, that, many times you have school counselors or school psychologists that are doing counseling services, that you can then allocate a portion of their time that's being used for that.
You can change their funding. Their, in their job funding, you can split it.
Yeah,
You can do a 50-50, 70-30.
And then the requisition. Right, and then when you have to report out on those, you're gonna have to identify how many students they served, when they served, maybe not when, but,
Well, they
It
get
might be
wrong
quick.
anyway, so
Right.
we just need to submit it.
right.
Yeah. It may not be necessarily new people, but you could just shift some of your expenses. And then if you've got a sizable chunk coming back from your fee for service,
Right.
and you combine that, you may have, but you're not tied to just funding mental health then. You can fund whatever you need. So if you need more speech people, you can fund them, if you can find them.
But like, I lost my behavioral psychologist who just did behavior, so I would really like to bring that position back.
Yeah.
But without this resource, the cat is gonna stay out.
Yeah.
So with this.
So if
fee
you
for-
look for your fee for service that you
Mhm.
paid for self-counseling last year, and assume it's going to be about the same, it would have been about the same this year, that would be money you would have recouped.
And that our hope is, by doing this, we're going to get similar allocation each year.
Yes.
So we could assume that money would
If
stay.
you want to use the money.
Okay.
Joan, I think we're already, this is a well thought out plan, honestly. And this already is gonna be providing a lot more support than we ever got for GBH. It's connected to us, there's gonna be communication between counselors and services and districts. I think it sounds great. It's actually pretty exciting.
I think actually this is a good step forward, and that unfortunately was because of the level of service we had been getting from DBH. Our county intern